Hello everyone, very nice to meet you all. I'm Esther. I started researching local energy markets like 6 years ago during my dissertation at Karlsruhe University in Germany. And I focused a lot on the market side and the agent behavior. And then after a couple of years, we started doing implementation projects. So it started with the LAMP project with 20 households. And right now I have up to 12 projects at the same time, most research and pilot, and some actually on the market implementation projects. So I today will be talking a little bit about research. So the first part of the talk will be research focused, and then I will give you an intro in some of the introductory projects that I'm doing right now. So let's have a look at that. For all of you who don't know me, right now I'm working for MK Consulting. That's a consulting firm I founded, and I'm also responsible for the heat IT systems in Germany, for the decentralized heat systems from Vattenfall. So that's kind of where I am right now. I started out in the electricity markets, now I'm in heat, and I hope to combine both of them later on so that we can have actually fully integrated local markets and energy communities. So first of all, let's have a look at where peer-to-peer trading and local energy markets are. I'm pretty sure most of you know the Garda curve, right? See some people nodding at least. So this is the curve for current energy topics. And as you can see, energy communities are pretty much at the top of the hype, just coming down. This means that everything that has to do with energy communities, how people are getting their energy sharing inside of energy communities and peer-to-peer is coming down from the hype, and we're actually establishing business models in the future. Unfortunately, we're not here yet, so I would like to be here. I've been working on coming here for energy communities for some time. So let's hope that if I give a talk in 5 years, we're actually on the path to have established business models here. I mean, all of you are in energy research, so we don't really have to do a lot of motivational talks. Just for you, I'm from Germany, so this is pretty much German-based. In Germany, to go to a more decentralized energy system, we are having 3 different strategies right now. So we're talking a lot about grid expansion, obviously. Unfortunately, that's very expensive. And as you can see, lots of people in Germany don't like that. The not in your backyard problem, not in my backyard problem. So we all want cheap electricity, but in Germany, people are protesting a lot, especially in the south, because they don't want the grid lines, at least not the overhead lines, and the lines under the earth are pretty expensive. So one of our other strategies is expanding on storage. We had a pretty good strategy when we were still in an electricity market with Austria. Unfortunately, we split the electricity markets, and right now we're buying stored electricity that we're selling to Austria for negative prices first. Obviously not all the time, but it does happen. So storage is kind of something we should have done, but it's unfortunately not at the level where we would like it to be. And then we have our energy communities. Local electricity markets, local energy markets, energy communities. We have a lot of different names, and we always mean something different by them. But in the end, it is just a community of people sharing energy. So let's have a look at the definition that I use, and I have been using for at least 3 years. We're always looking at a market platform. And that market platform connects different people, usually residential households. And this market platform is used for ensuring that local energy can be shared on a local level. And usually we always need a more higher level supply security, the national grid or other communities. So this definition has worked quite well for my research. I'll definitely update it when there's something to update, but right now this is what we're working on also for this talk. So let's have a look. Like I said, I will be focusing on energy research in the first part of the talk. So I'll be presenting 2 papers. The first one is of a conjoint analysis we have done where we are looking at the willingness to participate. and where we actually have numbers, like how much are people willing to pay more or less to participate in local energy markets. Then we're going more into mathematical modeling with agent behavior. And after that, I'll give you a short stint into our practice. So a short overview of the actual regulation in Europe, because I'm focusing on Europe. I don't know, how many people are here outside of Europe actually? Someone from outside? 2? I'm sorry, yes, I didn't think about the Great Britain. So some people outside of the EU at least. So the regulation will focus on the European Union, and then I'll be presenting one of my clients, the startup Echnaton from Switzerland, who actually have a lot of projects already in Austria and Switzerland in the field and who are just coming into the German market. So we'll finish with a little of reality here. So let's look at the research question for our first part. Let me just go forward here. So we will focus on the willingness to pay at first. So we'll look at which market design attributes are the most important for German people. And then we'll actually look at how the design of these market attributes influence the willingness to pay. And after that, we're going more, like I said, into the optimization and modeling part. And we actually model a local energy market. We look at the optimum Nash equilibrium that we can calculate there. And then obviously we're going into the heuristic side, so looking at reward-based learning and how we can model normal human behavior, so agent behavior on those markets. Let's start with the first one. We're looking at a conjoint analysis that we have done here. So I'm pretty sure most of you know those comparison portals. You compare for your electricity price, you compare for the best flight to Crete, you compare for, I don't know, the next car you buy. This is a screenshot of a German comparison portal. So here you can just compare everything. This is electricity prices. So you have different suppliers on there, you have different prices. You might notice that this is still prices from before the energy price increase. So might have to update that now. And we have done pretty much that in our conjoint analysis, and we have asked people to choose their electricity market, their local electricity market or not. And we wanted to find out whether they want to participate in this or not. We've done a standard adaptive choice-based conjoint analysis. So if you have any question of that, we can talk about that later. Here I was just focusing on giving you the results of that. The survey was already done at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. So we're actually looking to repeat that. Unfortunately, we don't have the funding for the project yet, but hopefully it'll arrive maybe next year. What we looked at is different market attributes. You can see them here with different levels, 3 to 4 levels, and obviously the monthly cost. So in the end, we just ask people, would you take part in this electricity market? For example, something where you have to change your supplier, where you have to input your prices or preference monthly, where you get green electricity, where you do not have to share your data, where you do not have to invest anything, and that costs about 100 euros per month for your household. For the electricity mix, we had 4 different levels. And our hypothesis was that gray electricity is the cheapest. Then we would switch to green, regional green, and local green that will get more expensive. That was the hypothesis back in 2018 and 19. I can already tell you this is not what we are looking at right now. So right now, electricity is actually cheaper on the more local level. We found that in our studies there, and we also have that in the regulations that is currently being implemented. So let's have a look. Our 2 data samples were once German-wide, that is the easier one. So this is pretty much representative for Germany. And then a more green community that was in the south of Germany where people are already interested in green electricity. They were already in an energy community. So we compared the results of those 2 samples. We had about 600 data sets, 240 here, about 400 there. And with that, we were pretty good in the conjoint basis. So for our results, We'll start with the relative importances. These just tell you how important one of the attributes is in comparison to the other ones. And the biggest one, the biggest result you see here is obviously people care mostly about their costs. And then after the costs, we have a lot of market attributes that are pretty much at the same level, like choice of supplier, input frequency, source mix. And apparently German people do not really care whether their data is being used or not. That's something we were a little astonished about because we talk a lot about data privacy, especially in the energy market. But apparently in our sample, this was not really that interesting. So let's have a look at what this actually means. And here we can put numbers to the talks. So what we actually know is that in the study, we showed that in Germany, at the end of 2018, the beginning of 2019, people would be willing to pay a little more for regional green electricity than for normal green electricity. They expected a high decrease of costs for gray electricity, and then they also expected a decrease of costs for local and regional green electricity. So this is just the green-minded people who actually would be paying a little more. This was against our hypothesis. We actually thought, okay, they were willing to pay more for local and green electricity, but like I said, we found out that is not the case. So fortunately, current regulation is actually working in our favor here. But what we could say with this is that on the results of our study, people expected to have approximately German-wide a reduction of about 15 euros per month in their electricity bill if they were using local green electricity in a local market. We've done a subgroup analysis as well. So a lot of subgroups, but this is just age and household size that I brought to you. So here we can see that people older than 60 years and households of more than 2 persons actually more prone to the electricity supply. So they would be more willing to participate in local energy markets. There are a lot of subgroups, and in our paper you can see more of this analysis. Just let me tell you, usually the whole of the people want a reduction in prices if they participate in local electricity markets. There are some subgroups, especially with big households and young green-minded people who say, okay, it's fine if we also pay a little more. And with that, we can actually already answer our first research question. So about the design attributes. We can say, first of all, the economic attributes are still the most important ones. All the market attributes are kind of similarly important, and the data use is negligible. What we can also say is that the willingness to pay mostly depends on the costs, economic-minded humans in Germany here. And we have those different subgroups of households where we can say, okay, they would be willing to pay more. So you could either introduce premium priced energy communities in local energy markets, or you could actually get them to invest in shared models. That's something we're working on right now, where we're saying these people, these subgroups of people who actually value local electricity more than the others, they might be willing to pay more. But as the price is relatively low in energy communities right now, these people might actually be willing to invest in more local production so that we have more prosumers and producers in our communities. That was the answer for the first research question we had about the willingness to pay. We would now switch to the optimization problem. So let's model such a local energy market. And it's a pretty basic model that we have here. So we have our local energy market down here, where we actually match prices and amounts of energy. We have our group of consumers who want to have enough energy. They just have a demand and they just want the demand filled, usually at the lowest price possible. And then we have our our producers up here, who could also do prosumers. So we modeled the prosumers as being part consumer and producer. And they want to sell their electricity, usually at the highest price possible. So we have a leader optimization problem where we say this demand getting met at the lowest price, and this generation being sold at the highest price is our leader problem. And then we have a follower problem, which is our local market problem. Here we go for our 2 leader problems. Okay. Here we go. Here we go for our follower problem. And in the follower problem, we decided on what we want on the local market. So we actually want to maximize the amount of energy traded, which means the amount of energy staying in the local community. So we decided to maximize the amount of energy being used locally. And if we want to solve those problems, there are different approaches. I'm pretty sure most of you know some approaches at least. We decided on the Gauss-Seidel diagonalization approach, which is pretty well known for such a leader-follower problem, but obviously is NP-hard, and so we also looked into heuristics, especially for markets in the work, so markets who are actually going on in the field. You cannot always solve an optimization problem in the field. First of all, you don't have the information. Second of all, sometimes you actually have a time limit. And third of all, it's just a lot of calculation capacity that you need. And if we just, well, we implemented that in a local market on Raspberry Pis. So we could have done that, but some of the Pis were actually overloaded. We kind of destroyed some of the Pis. Please don't tell anyone who likes that hardware. We liked it, but apparently don't put them in the sun too much when you calculate. So we had to do some heuristics here. So reward-based learning is what we decided for. Nowadays, you can do a lot of reward-based learning. We did reinforcement learning. Obviously, you can choose other approaches as well. We decided for reinforcement learning mostly because we wanted to focus on the human behavior. So we actually wanted to emulate what people would choose if they were actively working in their app and deciding on prices. Obviously, they don't do that. We have the decision support system for that, but we wanted to make it so as if they were actually working on that. Here you can see our formulas for that. This is the Arrow-Roth reinforcement learning that we expanded on and specifies to local energy markets. So that in the end, you have a probability for each price, and the probability is in each round adapting to how you performed in the last round. We used that approach and others that I will show you for a case study that we did with a lot of real data. So we have some producers, the generation data here. We have some prosumers, which were just households with solar system, and then we had some consumers. The household data was mostly from Germany, no, actually only from Germany. The generation data as well, but we had also some solar data from France because we just didn't have any recent generation data from Germany. For our case study, we just chose a very small market. This is just 6 people, 6 agents in the market. The implementation projects I'm a part of right now have more than that, so this was just a very small case study. So if any of you want to do simulations, please put it at least 15 people, 15 households. That is kind of the lower limit that we have in the implementation projects right now. For our simulations, we used the data I just showed you an overview of. We had 5 different strategies. So obviously a basic strategy with no local energy market existed, then our optimal approach, and then 3 heuristics. One is random and one is maximum generation, just for comparison, and then our reinforcement learning. The parameterization is also there. We did that on a first complete enumeration, so we actually had the optimal parameters for our case study. And then we did a pretty standard simulation where we trained our data over 1 year. So obviously with all the seasons, with all the work days, with all the summer holidays. And we did the simulation until our standard deviation did not change any more than 2.5% into each direction. So then we stopped the simulation. We're like, this is a pretty stable result. So let's have a look at the results. This is over all agents, so no differentiation between producers, prosumers, and consumers. And this actually shows you the average cost of electricity per year with the different solution strategies that we chose. Let's have a look at what this actually means. So obviously prices before the energy crisis. If you have no local electricity market, a standard household in our simulation would pay about 800 euros per year. That was pretty much the standard price during that time in Germany. If you have the optimal solution, that price would decrease. And if you have our learning solution, that price would be just a little higher than the optimal solution. Let's have a look at how much higher actually. 5% more expensive. So we could show in our simulation we are actually within 5% to the optimum, and we could also show that there was no statistical difference. So statistically, there's no difference between our learning approach and the optimal solution. And they were all able to reduce the cost to at least half in the optimum and almost half in our learning approach. So if you are a household in Germany, if you took part in such a local energy market, you would actually be able to reduce your costs by half over the year. This is a simulation. This is not the real world. We'll come to the real world later on. But for the simulation, that was actually pretty good. Let's split it into producers and consumers. So what we can see here is for the producers, they don't have all the information in the market because obviously they don't know what the other agents will bid. But we can see that the cost of the incomplete information from the optimum to our learning strategy is about 100 euros per year. For the consumers, that is not a lot. The consumers actually, well, they don't have all the information, but they don't really care because the loss of, well, here it is, costs. The additional costs are only about 6 euros per year. And with that, we can actually answer our second research question. So the profit maximizing Nash equilibrium in such a local market can definitely be calculated. We calculated it once to the optimum with the Gauss-Seidel diagonalization approach, and then we showed that the reinforcement learning that we chose actually was able, let's have a look here, sorry, one too far, was able to find the optimum solution within a 5% gap in all of our simulation series. And that 5% gap was not statistically different. So much for the research part. And now from the research, we will go more into implementation. What is actually being done? I will focus on Europe, focus on the EU, have to be specific there. And then let's have a look at what is actually the reality in the EU. So we'll be switching to the second part of the talk here. Let's apply our research results and let's first have a look at what the European Union thinks about energy communities. So the EU actually has some regulation about energy communities. The second directive is just coming out, well, has just been come out. And it is supporting energy communities. It is suggesting that the local tariffs will actually be lower because of tax reductions, because of electricity tax reductions, because of reductions of grid fees, and also subsidies. However, not every country, at least in the EU, has implemented that regulation into local law. Right now, the projects I'm part of, they are mostly in Austria and in Switzerland, where the regulation is pretty far. Do we have any Austrians or Swiss people here? Nice. Austria or Swiss? Very nice. So Austria is actually the country where I would say the EU directions are implemented very well into local law. Swiss also. Germany, unfortunately, not yet. We're working on that. The other countries, we probably have people in here who are more expert on that than me, so I will be focusing on those 3 countries. One thing we have to be aware of is the rising energy prices. So EU regulation or the EU directives show us that local taxes, local grid fees will be reduced. Unfortunately, the energy price itself, the generation price, has risen so much that this reduction is not worth that much anymore. Usually we could reduce the energy price about 10, 15, 20% just by the reductions from the EU level. However, right now the energy price, the generation price itself is that high that those reductions, well, they don't really make a difference anymore. So we have to look at the energy price themselves, which is one of the best motivations for local energy markets, because there you can choose the generation price. You have your renewable sources, you have your solar systems. Some people actually have a wind turbine somewhere near, and they can decide on their energy prices. It is not the energy prices from the spot market. So while I'm very unhappy personally about the rising energy prices, for our research, that is actually okay, because it is motivating a lot of people to think about energy communities or to join them. I have seen an increase in regional initiatives in the last 6 to 8 months. There's a lot of people reaching out and calling, being like, hey, I want to be part of an energy community and I want to make sure that I can actually share my energy locally or buy it from my neighbor. This has not happened in the last years. There's actually an increase that I personally can, let's say, I can demonstrate, and I feel that increase in just the people calling. Whether that increase will actually relate to more projects being there on long term is something I can probably tell you in 1 or 2 years. I can tell you that the amount of projects is rising, the interest is rising tremendously. Let's see if the implementation is actually staying there. One thing that has not changed is that there's always 2 sides to the energy communities. So there's a lot of people who are like over the moon, being like, this is exactly what I want. And then we also have that amount of people in every energy community, some of your neighbors who are more like, why do we have to do that? Do we actually want to do that? This is more work for us. I don't want to download an app. I don't want to input any prices there, even if it's only one. I don't want to log into something. You know the issues. This is what we're working with in field work. So we always have some people on the ground, at least for getting the energy community up to date, like online and live. We tried doing that completely virtual. We're still trying that. I'll give you an example of the Echnaton startup in just, I think, the next slide, where you can onload your energy community completely virtually. That works pretty well in Austria and Switzerland. Unfortunately, German people kind of expect someone to be there at least once to tell them how it would look like and what it would be like. One trend is also coming from the housing industry. So people building communities and neighborhoods, talking about apartment buildings here. So where we have 5 houses, 6 houses, big houses with a lot of apartments. Those neighborhoods or communities are rising up all over Europe. In Germany especially, because we have, well, let's say we need more apartments. We have more people than we can actually house comfortably. So this is something that is growing up. And in those newly built buildings, you have the best opportunity to already integrate local energy markets. Obviously, you can do it in buildings that are already there. You can add smart meters, you can get the people digitalized. But if you're really building such a community from the ground on, you can make sure the network is completely private, everything is connected, you have all the meters in there. That's a very good opportunity, and we're using that because we actually have a lot of communities being built. Unfortunately, such a community being built in Germany takes about, well, at least 5 years from the idea to actually people moving in. So this is pretty much slow moving. But it is something that we will hopefully pick the fruits from in 3 to 10 years when we have a lot of already digitalized communities with the hardware in place. So this is what the reality looks like. The EU wants us to do energy communities and is actually giving us the tool to implement reductions in fees in local law. Most of the EU countries are working on that. Some are already very successful. And now I would switch to a more case study of the startup in Switzerland. You have probably already heard about the Echnaton startup, or at least some of you, the ones from Switzerland, hopefully. That is one of the startups that is a client at our consulting firm. And they offer the software as a service for energy communities. So let me just give you a tidbit from what they are doing on the day-to-day basis. They started out with being like the company virtually uploading energy communities during the time of COVID. So you couldn't do any field work, you weren't really able to go out. So you actually had to do all of that digitally, which is pretty good for the digitalized communities, not so much for the not digitalized ones, but we hopefully don't have that issue anymore in a couple of years. And so far, the three big selling points that most communities are focusing on is either direct peer-to-peer trading, where they're really focusing on the market, smart dynamic tariffs, mostly for communities with a lot of EVs. In Germany, there's a law coming out that at the beginning of next year, every utility or every energy seller has to offer a dynamic tariff based on the spot pricing. So this is something that is actually being written on law, that this, by the beginning of next year, has to be included everywhere, in every energy utility and every energy seller. And the third one that most people are interested in is shared investments, because we have a lot of single homes with PV panels all over Europe, actually. In the apartment buildings, it's not that far yet, so we're still working on getting a lot of PV panels up there. And then we have those apartments somewhere in the city there that either don't own their roof or can't support PV panels, who want to share and invest 10%, 15% in a large PV panel, or maybe even a wind turbine somewhere else. So those are pretty much the three most important selling points in energy communities in the field right now. One short intro about the startup. I'm also giving you some other names of startups later on, but just for Echnaton, I got to know the founders of that. There are three of them during my time at the PhD. They did their PhD on pretty much the same projects as I did, on the same topics, but in Switzerland. And their projects were so well received that they just founded the company, and it's been going strong for more than 5 years right now. Here you can see an overview of the projects actually in place. As you can see, Austria and Switzerland are pretty well in the project base. In Germany, we're just starting out here. I have a little one here as well. And the software is actually already available as a preferred partner of SIP, so energy communities are not only on the local level or on the research level anymore, but the big companies are already investing as well. Which is pretty cool, because a couple of years ago it was more like a very niche project. It's still niche, but I'm sure we're getting there. So the software, it's called Power Quartier, is actually something that you put between an energy utility and the community. Because usually utilities kind of want either everything of an energy community or nothing to do with it all. Unfortunately, most utilities do not have the software or will not build it up themselves, so they kind of need a software provider that just goes in between them and that helps them build up the energy community, match the prices, maybe even invoice the prices. Here you can see some screenshots of what the app will look like, or does look like. So people in Austria and in Switzerland already have that app in daily use. I can tell you most people do not go into it daily, but weekly at least. And sometimes if they open their app, they just do it repetitively over the next couple of hours just to see if something changes. So they are looking at how much of the energy locally do they get, and they are also looking at how much do they pay or how much do they save. Let's have a look at how much do they save. So you remember the simulation study, where we were like, okay, you can halve your energy costs. In a simulation study, yes. In the field, unfortunately not. least not from what we have right now. So right now, the reduction of energy price or the increased benefit is about 80 to 150 euros for each member of the community. It's not wall-breaking, but it is quite okay. So you can save about 100 euros per year if you are part of an energy community. And that includes fees for smart meters, software fees, and anything else. That's pretty much the number that you can work with. Obviously, there are differences in the day. I'm pretty sure I don't have to tell all of you that. Days with production have a lot of trading on the local market, nights without production not. So you can see here everyone is getting energy from the utility. Here you also have some local sellers that are actually selling during the day. One to many. The most important parts of such an energy software are actually that you can work with the smart meter data. Smart meters and smart meter gateways are usually preferred, but in the field, some dongles that you just put on the hardware is something we're actually working with. In some regulatory cases, you can invoice on that data. In other cases, you need the smart meter data. What you also always need is obviously a front end for the end user and also for the utility. But that's something that is the easiest thing to do. The most important thing is actually making this software completely scalable for be able for use for 50 households, 15 to 50 to 100 to 1,000 households. So that is the most important thing to do, because right now the communities have less than 100 households. Some have a little more, but it's not that much. In the perspectives of most communities, in the next couple of years, that will rise to at least 4 figures per community. Let's see in 2 years if it's actually there or not. I just brought you some of the projects and some of the spokespeople for them. So obviously these are people who like energy communities and have already invested in them. But it's always nice to see what they're saying. So definitely the future, even for utilities. Actively contributing to the energy revolution, something that people thought they did by becoming prosumers, and now energy communities are the next step. And also something like partnerships, communication and partnerships with the offerers, like the people offering energy communities, with the other neighbors, and also with the utilities. So I was actually astonished how many people told me, yeah, they would like to talk to the utilities, but they don't know how, because the utilities are always talking so technical. So something that motivates them is also just having someone there who's able to explain not only energy, but energy communities, which is more complex for people who are not interested in that usually, on a level where they can actually understand it. So let's shortly recap, actually the entire talk right now. First, on the research basis, energy communities are very well established in research. Definitely not done yet. We've seen at the Garda hype curve, we are not there at business model level yet. We're still at the hype of research and just coming down. Some of the less researched topics, I would call them, is definitely the amount of uncertainty and physical constraints. Right now, everywhere where we implement energy communities, we're just using the grid as it is, and right now it's holding everywhere. But physical constraints and transformers actually having to be updated is something that will definitely come in the next couple of years if energy communities are rising. We are also looking at the information systems. Up until the beginning of last year, I've always talked about blockchain in my talks. Let's just say I've switched to decentralized information systems pretty soon, and right now I'm just talking about software, whether it's decentralized or centralized. For the energy community, it doesn't really matter as long as the software is working. And for us as researchers, it's pretty cool to actually do something on decentralized ledger technology because you get a lot of funding money. If it's actually working out, that depends on how well you code. Usually it works out. If you can save costs by that, that is something, well, let's say I'm not convinced you can. You can use it. It probably costs the same or a little bit more. There are other benefits. I would always say, stick to the energy communities, use with whichever software is available and working. Of course, you can sell everyone a blockchain, but to be honest, in the end, they don't even notice if it's on a blockchain or not, because they use a scalable software that works with a nice front end. The back end is, for most people in the field, not that important. For researchers, definitely. And for, well, coders and developers, so they might kill me for saying that. Well, it's important for them, yes, definitely, but most of them can work with both. One topic is the research implementation that is going on pretty well. So I started out with a LAMP project that is being finished, well, that has finished right now. It has a follow-up project and is now merged into the SMARS project. There are a lot of other projects, mostly in Austria and in Germany, that are on here. So I predict that the research on local energy markets will continue to go strong, hopefully very strong until the next couple of years. But the part I want to focus on is actually the deployment in the communities. So research-wise, I believe we are at a point where we can focus on niche things of energy communities in the research. Different agent behaviors, different codings in our software, different deployments in different countries, and how it affects the motivation, how it affects not only the economic, but the more soft information of the energy communities and the households. And I believe the most important step right now is coming down from the hype curve, coming down into business models. So actually putting the simulations, and be it Echnaton, be it Grid Singularity, or NEOM, or eFriends, or OurPower, whoever the startups or companies are that are doing energy communities, all of them are looking to actually implement business models that are working long term. For the short term, we have a lot of solutions. We have a lot of solutions here where we can do energy communities, where we can do peer-to-peer trading, dynamic tariffs, but we still have to show that it actually works, that our peer-to-peer trading in energy communities with local energy markets or with energy sharing actually works over a long time and scalable, not only in one community, but in a lot of communities, not only in one country, but being able to transfer from one country to another. So this is something we haven't shown yet. At least I don't know any company that has shown that yet. And I hope, and I'm actually sure, that that's something we will talk about in the next 5 years at least. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed either the research or the more fieldwork part, or both of them. I'm not quite sure how much time we have left before our fire alarm, but I'm sure at least some questions could be answered. 50 minutes, perfect.